My neighbor gave me this trailer. Her dad built it and used it on his property for years behind his lawn tractor. It's a nice little trailer, built really well. And so I decided to, in turn, give it to my daughter and son-in-law for them to use on their property. And they pull it behind an ATV, and it worked out really nice for them. Well, that is right up until the day it was stolen. So I decided that I would build them a trailer. I'd build it to fit their needs, and a couple of things in mind. Number one, it needs to be fairly lightweight, easy to pull behind an ATV. Don't want it too big. It's got to make it through their trails. I wanted some tires it could handle, running around off-road. And I wanted this thing to be easy to store so they could get the trailer into their shipping container without taking up too much space. So this is what I came up with. All right, this is what I have so far. So what we're looking at is a 4 foot wide by 5.5 feet long. It's a flatbed right now, but I'm not done with it. The wheels and tires are golf cart wheels and tires, and they came from a golf cart dealer not too far from here that sells wheel tire combos for $10 each. These are takeoffs. So these will work really nice. I got other parts from really from Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. I bought an old boat trailer for $40 and scavenged some pieces for that. I bought a ladder rack, homemade ladder rack off a truck. That got me a lot of this tube steel. I bought a little bit of steel, but this is what I have so far. So let me show you how it all works. All right, so it's a tilt bed. Just flip that down, and it tilts. That's pretty easy. Now, part of the issue is storage on this thing, so I designed this thing to come apart, and the axle and tongue section separates from the bed, and this can then go into a storage container, be stood up, and take very little space. The bed can be left outside so it doesn't disappear. So let me show you the mechanism for how that works. I spent a lot of time thinking about this and how to get this thing to come apart and go back together and to do it easily. My first thought was just to use some pins, but I know getting things put back in place and pins lined up can be very difficult. So this is what I chose to do instead. I created a couple of cradles, one on each side with a little V shape. I welded on a couple of loops onto this one so that when the trailer, here's what we've got on this one. So we've got a pin that comes through here, and this pin drops down into this V, and once it's in place I need to keep it from lifting up. Most of the time it'll stay right there where you put it because all the weight of that trailer is going to want to hold it down, but you hit a bump, it could hop up. So I put a couple of hoops on here and a pin that goes in there, and we just lock that in place. That goes over the top and holds it. So let me drop it back in and show you that. So this locking mechanism, I bought that online, and it came with this little handle that you flip up and down Didn't really like that handle. I wanted something a little more substantial, so I built this out of some metal I had laying around. All you gotta do is just drop that down and it just lays right in there. So that should work pretty good. I did a lot of cross bracing on this too, and I didn't want to overbuild it, but I didn't want this thing flimsy because it's going to be bouncing around on trails. So the bed itself, a lot of cross bracing on the edges just to keep it nice and square. And then on these legs that really connect the bed to the axle, I wanted that really strong because I knew this was going to take a lot of the weight. So I built this structure and tied it into my cross beams. And then I don't know, maybe it's just me. I was afraid even that it may want to, turn from side to side. So I put in some flat stock here on each of these corners as cross bracing to stiffen it up. And then I just added some rod in here too, out to these edges on the axle up here onto the tongue, just to keep that axle from wanting to wander side to side if it catches a tree stump or something. All right, with all that done, I still think it's pretty lightweight. I mean, it doesn't take much to lift this thing, so I think I've met that goal. Next thing I'm going to do is I'll put some 1/2-inch plywood decking on. I'll use treated plywood for that. And then I'm probably going to stop until I get my son-in-law out here, and over the winter what we'll do is build up some sides. So I think what I'd like to do is put maybe just some 12-inch sides all the way around. I'll use some angle, make a small tailgate for it. And then from there, I want to build taller sides that are removable so that they can haul mulch around. I know they want to put mulch down on their trails. And if we could get some higher sides on there that they can use for mulch, and then remove them when they don't need those, I think that'll work really well. These are the pins I made to retain the deck to the axle. And I'm kind of rethinking the mechanism that I designed. I just drilled holes through these and put these little clip pins in, but they're tough to pull out when you're crawling underneath there. To have to go find a pliers to get these apart, I don't think is a good design. So here's what I came up with instead. Made up new pins, and I still have a hole through here, but I put a slot in there, and I made up a little plate. That plate fits in the slot, or I'll call it a blade, and it just pivots. So you pivot it straight, slide it in, pivot it back, and it should stay in place. And so what I'll do is drop a little roll pin through here to retain this plate. Okay, here they are all put together. Pretty simple, really. There's not much to them other than just this little blade that goes this way. Should lock in. I don't expect that to slide out. I'll hang on to those other ones though, just in case one of these goes missing. At least they'll have some spares. Okay, this ought to work really well. Those just twist right in there like that. Just slide it in, let it flip, and we'll see if that works. Here's the next little bit of progress. I just put a wood deck on this. I used 1/2-inch treated plywood, attached it with 1/4-inch carriage bolts. These are 3 inches long, and there's 20 of them here holding the deck down. I did one other small modification, and that was this handle, the release for the tilt deck. It sat a little bit higher than the deck, so I took that off and cut it down, rebent it. Just in case you happen to be running as a flat deck and you haul something that extends a little bit beyond here, I didn't want this handle to get in the way. All right, since I've got all winter to work on this project and I'm kind of waiting on some time that Nicholas and I can get together and work on this thing, I thought I would spend a little bit of time collecting a few parts, doing a little bit of engineering work, and some of that stuff that just requires a little extra time. So I splurged, and by splurged I meant spent very little money, but I bought 5 of these 3/4 inch square steel tubing. These are 12 footers. So that should be enough to build all of our sides and our ends for the trailer. And then I started thinking about engineering on these things as well. All right, this is just a little mock-up of the side of the trailer. And I think what I'm going to do is use stake pockets here to fasten it, because I want to be able to take these sides off of the trailer and run it as a flatbed. So this is what I'm thinking. Those will fit really nice like that. And then not all of the pockets, but for at least 2 on each side, I want to do something to keep these from popping out of here. Only because, again, this thing will be running down trails and I don't want these to rattle their way out. So I just drilled a hole, and I'll use these little pin connectors. I guess I can make that a little bigger. There we go. To lock those in. So I think that'll work just fine. All right. So we've got the sides and both the front and the back gates locked in at the bottom using these stake pockets, but really what's to keep the top from moving around? I want to lock those together too. So here's a couple of different ideas I came up with. One is just to make up some simple tabs and weld those on. So that's where the tops would come together and that would lock them in nicely. Pretty simple design. Another design I tried out that I kind of like a little more is to use more of a pin type of a connector. And so what I've got is a bushing here that I welded just some rod into, and again tack that on there. And leave a little bit of clearance, but those lock together. I kind of like this. It looks a lot nicer, it's less likely to catch on things. So I think that's what I'm going to go with. All right, so for the stake pockets, I actually made those. I had some leftover 1x2. This is some pretty thick stuff, but I had some leftover. So I just sliced it down the middle and ended up with these side pockets. So I can weld those on now. Those ought to work real nice. The other thing I wanted to do is make up those pins. So I got a piece of, this is 7/16 rod that I had just laying around. So I got that, and then I bought some 3/8 inch just black pipe. And this stuff is about a 1/2 inch. Was this 3/8? Yeah, this is called 3/8. But this fits in nice. There's a little bit of clearance, and I kind of want that, a little bit of slop in there just so that it's easier to align these. So that's what I used to make up these. So what I did was kind of put a spacer. I put a little bit of tape inside so I would space it nicely inside of this, and then just welded that rod into this piece, so that's fixed. And then I've got another piece so that can drop right down. All I need to do now is to weld these barrels onto those sides once we get those built. So I got 4 of those, 1 for each corner. And I don't know how we're going to do this yet, but I thought let's pick up some tie downs so that we can figure out how we're going to secure loads to this thing as well. So I don't know for sure if we're going to go with these, but we'll go with something like that. All right, Nicholas just left. We spent, probably 3 or 4 hours working on this. So we've got at least the framework for the sides welded together. So the next thing we'll be doing, we did it on the end gate and on the front gate. We already welded in our bracing. I think we're going to do 2 more braces here on each of the sides. And after that we can start working on the metal to fill in all of these gaps. Picked up some sheet steel for the sides. I got these from a metal fabricator. They were cut-offs and the guy didn't want to scrap them. So he sold me these for 10 bucks a sheet, which is really reasonable. They're 2 feet wide by 5 feet long. It's 14 gauge. So you can see it's really thick stuff. So I've cut these pieces up. And they're going to go on just like this. This would be one of the end pieces, either the front or the back. So we got that. Now these sides are just a little longer than 5 feet, so I ended up cutting it in 2 pieces. So this will go land right on that support, and then the short piece here, I bent it up just with a little bit of a lip, and I want to overlap these, and I'm not going to weld these. I'm going to drill and rivet these in, and the reason I'm doing that is because I don't really want to weld galvanized. It puts up some pretty nasty fumes, and I think rivets will be plenty to hold that in place, so I'll probably just use some nice rivets, and that should do it for the sides. All right, back at it today. The jobs here that we're going to tackle is, these are just tacked in, so we're going to get these welded in, and that will be the end of the core frames. And then I started making up the stakes for these, so I just kind of cut those at an angle. And these are going to go in here kind of like this. So we'll weld these in today, and then we'll get our stake pockets welded in once those are done. And then we'll get our corner links in here. So hopefully by the end of the day, these things are going to be ready to attach. And then from there, we'll move on and rivet in the galvanized metal. So let's get going. All right, Nicholas came out today and we did some more work on this. We are done with the sides. So it was just a little bit of welding on some verticals that we added, and then all of the stakes, all the stakes are on now. And we took the time to get those aligned so you don't have to worry about which side it belongs on. The sides will interchange and the front and the back will interchange. So it took some time to get it set up, but we did do that. The stakes, or the stake pockets, are just tacked in for now, and we'll burn those in, but we wanted to wait until we did our corner pins, which we'll get to next time. But surprisingly, a lot of welding. You wouldn't think, but there's a fair amount of welding today. So I think we've got one more day to get the corner pins done, to burn in the stake pockets, and then to rivet on all of the galvanized sheet metal. And this thing's going to be done. At this stage of the game, we've got the sides mostly done, and certainly the deck here is all done. So I a couple of small things. Number one, I want to get a coat of paint, primer and paint on the sides. I know I'm going to have to grind off these corners when we put those pins in, and then I can touch those up, but I want to at least get these protected. And then I'm going to try something I've seen done, but haven't done it myself. Now this is treated plywood here, so it should handle the weather. But I think I'm going to put a light coat of motor oil on here just to give it a kind of a consistent look and just see what it does. So that oil on the deck has absorbed in nicely now. And I think this thing maybe needs to sit out in the sun, but that's not going to happen since it's February here. But we'll get it out there eventually. I got a coat of paint on these sides, a couple of coats. So those look nice. So that's where we'll leave it until next time. All right, everything is just tacked in right now, but let's see if I can better change these things. The ends always have to come off first. And the sides can come off if I need to. good. I've got my 14 gauge galvanized sheeting here now cut and fit to exactly where I want it. I've clamped it down. All we need to do now is drill and rivet this thing on. With that trailer done, I thought I would do one more thing. I had another idea on how to make good use of this trailer for more than just simply a flatbed or a regular trailer. So I made this bow up, and let me show you how it works. Alright, we're going to reuse the base, and I want to be able to use this as a log skidder. So I made up this bow to fit right in the same cradle that the trailer bed fits in. So we'll do this, put the pins right back in where they belong. There we go. Okay. Now this bow tilts down like this, and then I grabbed the old winch off of that boat trailer. Figured I'd find a use for it. So when you want to use this as a log skidder, you just bolt this unit back on. And we'll put some sort of an eyelet or something to put this hook on, but right now I'll just wrap this around and show you how it works. so crank this up a little ways. So you'll be able to back this up over the log, get a chain around that log, hook the chain to this bow, and then just crank this up to lift that up off the ground. Doesn't have to go too far, but just to get it off the ground, and then it'll work as a log skidder. Okay, so I've got my hooks welded on and a good coat of paint on everything. So I just took and put a loop on the top, and that's to hook the winch line to. And then I put basically just a chain hook here to grab the chain that'll drop down to the log. And then I took the cable off of here and I put on some synthetic winch line. So this doesn't stretch and it should work really good. Okay, I'm going to show you how this works. That timber down there will just represent a log. I know it's kind of small, but it's what I've got available right now. So you can just lower this down over the log. And just grab this, get a chain around the log. I've wrapped around a couple times, and then just put it through the hook. And then crank it up as high as you like. I think that's enough to get it off the ground, get the nose off so you can drag it. So that was quick and easy actually, and I had all the materials right here.